You know, the smartest move for any sharp bettor is to not play every game. In fact, you're going to want to stay away from almost every game in the NFL. But if you must pick a side, we present for you the toss-up plays, and I am joined by sports handicapper Geoff Sheasby, otherwise known on Twitter as Old Man Who Bets, or Old Man with Stash this month, at the very least.
Amen.
That's for a victory. You should get extra points for that.
Yeah, for sure. Vegas really respects it. They pay me out extra, right? It's a 1.5x multiplier.
Dude, I'm telling you, you're a 10-gallon hat and sunglasses away from being a real sports handicapper.
Amen. I'll take that as the biggest compliment. Thank you, Steve.
Let's start things off with the Bills giving 4 against the Broncos. The Bills haven't beaten anybody of note. Denver nearly upset Minnesota. Does this line seem a little off to you?
I think it feels fine. You know, there's some injuries over on the Broncos side of things. I'm going to take the Bills here. I think the Bills at home are very fierce. We look at games with, against the Patriots where they lost by 6. That Patriots offense, even with no receivers, is way better than this Broncos offense. So if we can stop the run, Lindsey and crew in Denver, I'm going to go with Josh Allen and crew. Would love to see that closer to 3, but I don't think it'll come down that far. But nonetheless, I think under a touchdown, the Bills should rally behind their rambunctious fans and bring this one home.
Again, these are toss-ups. These aren't even leans. These are just toss-ups. Bears giving 6 at home, 6.5 rather at home against the Giants. That line has moved from 7.5. That's an important point. Does it change your play when you see lines move from 7.5 to 6.5?
7's certainly a key number here. In this scenario, it's a no play for me. I think there's a lot of uncertainty on both sides. Trubisky maybe has a hip injury, maybe was just getting pulled because of his mediocre performance. But I think that's really the key here is Trubisky has no confidence. They're not throwing plays to help him kind of bail him out of this hole that he's in. But their defense is that good. Can Danny Dimes do it on the road in freezing cold Chicago? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, we'll see. I think a touchdown spread feels pretty good when we combo the mediocre defense of the Giants with the mediocre offense of the Bears, and then the amazing defense of the Bears, and the slightly okay offense, trending in the right direction offense.
Yeah, I was going to say, at the very least, they have sometimes, Danny Dimes can hit the targets.
Yeah.
And he can make big plays.
It's a hopeful offense, and I think it's trending well for the future. I don't know if they bring it on the road here. I mean, but again, we need to see if Trubisky is 100% going to be in. I think he will play, but I don't know if that's even a good thing. Like the way that he's been throwing the ball, obviously Allen Robinson should eat because the secondary of the Giants is 0. Maybe see Tariq Cohen get a couple swing passes, take him to the house, but it feels about right at 7 with just so many kind of intangibles and so many mergy data points.
You call the Giants a hopeful offense. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're sweet. They're so cute.
Yeah.
They're trying. They really are. They're doing their best.
Yeah.
The Giants, or I should say the Steelers, same line, 6.5 over the Bengals. This should be a get-right game for the Steelers, but are the off-field distractions going to give you a little pause?
Not necessarily the off-field distractions. I think more the injuries. Juju is hurt, and we've got obviously Connor is hurt. I mean, Samuels has looked good, and then the other side of the ball. I mean, maybe AJ Green's back, maybe not. Dalton, I believe, is out. I mean, when you pull these backup quarterbacks in, I mean, look at Jeff Driscoll last week on the Lions.
Ryan Finley's bad.
He looked great, and then but you can't. The guy has a couple games under his belt. You have no idea what they're going to bring. And yeah, Ryan Finley, who should it be bigger than 6.5? Probably, but it's on the road. Again, just one of those games that I think it's hard to find really an edge to with the injuries, with a floundering team that might bring it, that might not bring it, with a Steelers team that has been inconsistent. Good defense on the Steelers. I think the Steelers defense isn't getting talked about enough, so maybe look for an under here. I bet.
But if you had to.
If I had to, I'm going with Pittsburgh.
Okay.
6.5.
All right. Falcons 4-point home favorites against the Bucs. Now, over the past couple of weeks, we've seen Atlanta go an average of 30 points over the spread with upsets of New Orleans and Carolina. How is everybody not all on board with the Falcons right now?
Yeah, good question. I think the line is a little short there. I mean, 2 games obviously isn't a statistical significant sample size, but it does look good for them. Matt Ryan's throwing the ball well. Their defense has awoken from quite the slumber.
There was a clear line of demarcation after the bye week.
Yeah.
Clearly, they got something right. They made some changes, and this is finally the Falcons team that we expected to see at the beginning of the season.
100%. I think they've definitely gotten something right. And when we look at the Bucs, I mean, turnover, Jameis Winston, super inconsistent. Of course, they're loaded at receiver with Godwin and Evans. But that inconsistency, the turnovers that he throws away, especially with the way that it appears the Falcons are playing, I think I got to lean Falcons -4 there. But you take into consideration the entire season, how much confidence can you have in that 2-game sample size? That's why it's a toss-up game. But of all the toss-up games we're discussing, I would say the Falcons -4 has the closest upgrade to a lean, but certainly nothing close to a best bet.
All right, the Redskins, 3.5-point home dogs to the Lions. Lions are playing with Jeff Driscoll at quarterback again. Is 3.5 points too big for the road Lions?
I mean, this is one of those things that, of course, you love a home dog, but it's the Redskins. So who knows?
Can you really trust?
Yeah, and Driscoll looked good last week. I mean, I think kind of out of nowhere, he's a dual threat. He ran for 51 yards with a touchdown, threw for over 200. You got Golladay, you got Marvin Jones. I mean, their running back scenario is kind of up in the air with obviously injury there. So again, one of those. It's just so much uncertainty with what Jeff Driscoll will show up. Who is Jeff Driscoll, and how can he march this team down the field? I think the Washington defense obviously is porous, but do the Lions have enough firepower to exploit that? 50-50 flip here, I would say yes. It's hard to back the Redskins against the spread in literally any game, and this one's a little short. So, on a line read, I'd probably go Washington, but with the injuries, I think it seems fair. I would probably lean towards, again, the favorite in Detroit.
All right, Titans favored by 3.5 at home against the Jaguars. Two teams that are just clinging to playoff hopes. They're both desperate right now. Does that play a favor? Does it favor one team over the other when they're both in desperation mode?
Yeah, I think this is interesting as well. Obviously, Foles is back, but I think Foles' perception of being a great quarterback, I think, is a little overinflated here. If you look at the stats and what Minshew did for this team, he was pretty solid. If you look at last week, that was one of my biggest handicaps, is that at the spread of 2.5, would you take the Jags with Minshew at that spread? And most people said, no, we wouldn't. And I thought that was kind of a comparable, transition, especially in his first game back, lacking chemistry, shaking off the rust. And what did the Jaguars do? They didn't cover. Wonderful.
Right.
Go Colts. But here we are, similar type of thing. Tennessee's fighting for their life. They've looked good with Tannehill. Derrick Henry can run forever. And this Jaguars defense isn't what it used to be. So when they lost Ramsey, everything kind of went out the window. So again, I would say coin flip here. Would love it to be under 3, kind of at that key number. Hate to just side with all the favorites in these lanes, but it feels like a favorite heavy week in a lot of these kind of battles of mediocre teams.
Money usually is on the side of the favorites. Yeah. Sometimes that's why you'd want to fade the public, but sometimes there's a reason why it's called gambling. Yeah. The Rams, 3-point home dogs to the Ravens. Baltimore looked like the most dominant team in the NFL in recent weeks. Rams are definitely not in Super Bowl mode. Why is this even a toss-up?
That's a great question. I think, again, kind of public perception. I think if the line was any bigger for the Baltimore on the road, that just so much action would come on the Rams. So to keep it as kind of a fair and balance, that's where we're at. Again, we want to lean towards Baltimore here. They've beaten literally everybody that they've come up against, other than the Chiefs. Yeah. And Goff in his last 16 games was a really interesting stat. Has very similar stats to Mitchell Trubisky. That's a red flag for me. Is it the Goff that we expected when he came into the league and was fantastic, or is it this Goff that all of a sudden is looking, not so great? Obviously, they covered last week versus the Bears, but it was kind of a miracle, fourth quarter cover, excuse me. And again, the Bears can't score, period. Look at Baltimore. Baltimore can score. They can score in a myriad of ways. So with a team like Los Angeles, I think is kind of trying to find their identity. Some banged up receivers. Kupp has either been great or, invisible. I think he had 0 catches 2 weeks ago, which was just unheard of, especially with him being the only starting receiver available. Lean towards Baltimore here unless Gurley can just kind of pull one out and go off.
All right, good notes. That is his toss-up plays for the week. Make sure you check out his top plays and his lean segments as well. The lines are always changing. Make sure you keep up with the latest on sportsline.com. For Geoff Sheasby, I'm Steve Overmyer. This is Fanalysis.